thank you for joining us in this new activity of the Leadership Summit. This is particularly special because we have a panel full of top-end leaders ready to share their experiences with us. I'm happy to introduce Paul, our CTO and General Manager for MBA. Hey, Paul. Todd, he's the Senior Director of Experience and Design. He's right here as well with us. Andres, Director of Technology, and Fabio, who is an Associate Delivery Director. So they'll be the main people kind of sharing their experiences, answering any questions you might have, and we will basically start with the activity now. Just a small note. While I do have some of my questions, the idea is to have you all kind of ask whatever you want to ask of these people who have an amazing trajectory of all sorts of experiences that you might want an answer for. For example, if you ever had a specific experience that you don't know how to handle, maybe you can share it with us, and they can help you out with finding a great resolution on how to handle it in the future. Or in any case, I'll let you raise your hands at any point or write any questions that you have in the chat. I'll be reading them to the panelists, and I'll let them answer them as we go along. And they will also be raising their hands so we can get their answers in order of that hand raising, I guess. Other than that, I think this should be pretty straightforward. I'm just here to kind of moderate the conversation. So we'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, I think Camilo already started recording. So the first part is a question for me, because I think it's a kind of a good spot to kind of set the tone. And the question in this case is same to any of you guys who want to answer. And that would be, can you share an example of a particularly difficult conversation you've had with a client or with a team member, and what you did to deal with it? Who would like to go first? Paul, please go ahead.
Sure. I think for me, the conversations that are most difficult are when giving performance feedback. So I remember one situation where a team member was having some difficulties. Other team members were frustrated with them not really participating and not really sort of holding up their end of the team. And the reason it was particularly difficult is that this person was completely unaware that there was any issue. Like they thought everything was fine, and they hadn't received any hints or indications that there was any kind of problem. So it was particularly difficult to know that, you know, here I was going to land a little bomb on somebody, and that made it particularly challenging. I think one of the things that helped me in that situation was really upfront, being very genuine and direct, and also just acknowledging the emotions around it, to be able to say, look, I have some feedback for you. This may be unpleasant, and it makes me a little nervous that I'm surprising you with this information, right? And just say, hey, you know, I'm having a difficult time sharing this with you as well, and to sort of establish that we're two people, we're having a conversation, there are emotions, and it's fine to sort of acknowledge them and put them out on the table. And I found that sort of takes some of it disarms things a little bit, to sort of, you know, put it out there and name it.
All right, thank you. Would anyone else like to build around that or share a different experience? Or from the audience, would you guys want to ask for further context on this? That's very welcome as well. Just raise your hands and I'll let you go ahead. Andres, please go ahead.
Well, first, building on that one, I would like so being on that situation, and one of the things that has helped me is to come prepared to that situation, because people will ask, why? Can you prove that? Is your word against mine? And if you're not prepared, you're gonna feel unstable, and then you will start doubting about yourself, about what you're saying. So when you come prepared and you start showing data or showing facts that has been helpful, people usually tend to accept better the feedback in that situation. And just to show another one, like very quick story. Uh, a long time ago in a project, somebody from my team run as automated script that removed some data. I'm just not going too much into details of what happened, but of course, one of the first things was people trying to say in the team, let's hide this. And that's the first wrong thing that you need to do. That's the wrong approach. And the right approach is the sooner the client knows, the better, because we can start, I don't know, working on the solution and start working on things instead of just trying to hide. And probably the first reaction is panic, I know. But as Paul mentioned, we need to acknowledge feelings at the moment and say, people, hey, yeah, it's okay. It's okay to panic, but let's focus on not on the issue, let's focus on how to resolve this and how we approach this. But the first thing that we need to do is that do not avoid that conversation. You need to face it, face the situation, face it, and start building on it to solve it.
All right. Thank you. So I actually, in this case, I have a question specifically for Todd, because I know we worked a little bit before, and I know his kind of role presents these kinds of situations probably a lot. Todd, I know we had an engagement where we had a client that had kind of his imagination, a certain reality of what they thought was the current status of their project. And you kind of came in to investigate and give a report on what that was, which ended up being completely different from what the client thought was the reality of that scenario. And I'm being very generic here, but I'm sure there's plenty of examples in your case. How do you usually handle having that conversation with them? Because it can't be easy to tell them, hey, you're not on the money at all.
Yeah, it does happen from time to time. And it was actually one of my notes here. I do think that is something that, that we run into. And I think the biggest kind of advice I can give, or the way that I think about it, is to make sure that, we kind of acknowledge, the miss. It really comes down to probably missed expectations. Somewhere along the way, someone was confused about what was happening, right? Whether that's on us or on them or both parties. We're talking different things. We come together and realize that we're not lining up. There's something, missing or broken here. And so I think it's worth kind of acknowledging that, entirely, saying, okay, well, we need to step back and see what we missed here. Oftentimes you get way in the weeds, you're in the details of what's going on, but the kind of bigger picture is actually what's driving some of this, conversation or frustration or whatever it is. So yeah, I've certainly been in those situations before, and I think that's kind of one of the key things for me when you get there, is just to kind of sometimes it makes sense to kind of halt the conversation and everyone go back and do a bit of research and figure out like how we got here. One of the things that I always think about is, in the moment, it's very hard to kind of feel like you're making the right calls, you're saying the right things. So sometimes stepping back and saying, let's get all the information out here and let's step away and come back very soon to talk about this, but give us a chance, all of us a chance to maybe take a deep breath, relax a little bit, figure out what's going on, and then come back a little bit more prepared to that conversation. Because yeah, if you're saying something and someone did not expect it at all, you're on two different levels, and that's going to be a very hard conversation kind of in the moment to have and to have success at, right? So, acknowledging it and then backing away from it a bit to get yourself situated to come back better prepared to have that conversation, I think is a good approach.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Just a small follow-up to what Todd said. It reminded me that the importance of that acknowledgement. It's amazing how it disarms or diffuses a potentially heated situation. Like it's it's bad news for the client. They're just now hearing it. And, if they're going to be angry or upset about it, I found that one of the best ways to diffuse that is just admit that there was a mistake. And so it's like, look, we messed up. There was a mistake here. So we don't have to spend a bunch of time fighting over, them getting mad at you and trying to convince you that you made a mistake. You're like, yep, I get it. There was a mistake. And they're like, wait, hold on. I was just about to yell at you and convince you you'd made a mistake, but then you accepted it. Now I'm not sure what to do. So I found that to be a very, very powerful tool.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely something I've applied myself. Thank you, Paul. Carrie?
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really important too is to listen for tone. When you find that people are talking in circles or they're repeating themselves, the frustration starts to build, and there starts to become this really negative sort of energy. And sometimes in that moment, I just stop talking, just be quiet and let them keep talking. And then I say, hey, can you repeat what you just said? And you know what, actually, I'm going to capture what you just said. I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet here, and here's what you say. You guys are, here's your concerns. Here's what, and we're going to owe you some responses on this, but I just want to we're going to write it down together. Where we believe we're off in our understandings.
I've seen you play that one in real time, Carrie. It's pretty impressive, honestly. Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, that is one of my notes too. Just to kind of follow up on that. I mean, silence is kind of key. I think it does a couple things. It makes people feel a little bit uncomfortable, which I think is kind of good, especially when someone's kind of coming at you. It kind of puts something out in the air, right, to kind of slow things down a little bit. It gives you time to process, and not just say whatever's coming into your brain right then and there, especially if emotions are high. You don't necessarily want to react to everything someone's saying. You want to have a chance to process it. So yeah, silence or just taking a pause or taking a deep breath is, for me, kind of key. It doesn't necessarily diffuse it, but at least it changes the tone a little bit. To your point, Carrie, that the tone is kind of a bit different when no one's talking and everyone's kind of trying to figure out what's going on a little bit, and give you a chance to kind of get grounded before you respond. So definitely agree.
Thank you, Todd. Fabio?
Thank you. Yeah, I also agree that most difficult conversations begin with the goal of identifying a resolution and, use it as an anchor throughout your conversations to avoid letting these discussions slip into unproductive, dialogue. So something that I always recommend is like, how can I say it? Speaking using first person language, like try to use statements that begins with first person language rather than second person language. So that, throughout my experience allowed me to, communicate in a very positive way my own perspective, avoiding accusatory language, right? So it makes easier to engage in critical discussions in a more comfortable way.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Fabio. Emma?
Something to add in the part of giving feedback and that we sometimes feel uncomfortable when providing that is that it's super important, the mindset that you bring to that conversation. Usually, and something that I take from Gab at some point from the manifesto is that feedback is a gift. And I really try to internalize that as when I'm giving feedback, I shouldn't really feel that uncomfortable, because what I'm trying to do is to help this person. I want to help this person. I want to let him know something is happening and that is impact him or her. And I want to help him or her to become better at it and don't get in a trouble, right? Or in a worse trouble. So that's kind of a mindset that if you bring it, you can feel better and you can feel well about it instead of uncomfortable about it.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you, Emma. All right, awesome. Thank you for the participation here. Is there anyone else who wants to add to this subject? We can also hop on to another question from either from the audience or other questions I have right here. Oh, all right. So Robert posted in the chat, I think what might be the next one. So when working with a valuable client who aligns well with GAP's culture, how do you identify if a customer team member is acting as a bad actor and negatively impacting the relationship? What steps as leaders can you take in the short term to protect the team and the project? And what strategies could address or resolve the negativity in the long term? And have you encountered a situation like this in the past? It's also in the chat if you want a little bit more detail. Who would like to tackle this one? Go ahead, Paul.
I'll jump in there. Hey, Robert, thanks for the question. This is an interesting one. I mean, a lot of times I've encountered, situations like this where things just surface as a bad smell. Like there's tension for no apparent reason, or there's infighting or finger pointing, where otherwise people seem to be aligned. So I think one of the important tools here is to leverage the opportunity to do retrospectives, and figure out a way to name the elephant in the room in case no one else is prepared to say it, to be able to make an observation about, hey, I don't know what was causing it, but I sensed this tension, or I saw this conflict that didn't seem constructive. So helping to sort of name the issue without placing blame, just observing and sharing that observation with the team can sometimes be a catalyst to get the conversation going, and to really surface what the real issue is. Because usually if somebody's acting out, there's usually some root cause that's causing that, some frustration or missing information or something.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Paul. Carrie?
Yeah, and once that conflict is identified, a good question to ask is, what would success look like to you if this was solved? So let's talk about what your definition of solved would be.
Yeah, agreed. Andres?
One thing that I feel that happens when you have this kind of bad actors, but as Robert mentioned, is that as you were saying, we need to identify the root cause, but probably you need to identify what is bothering this person, right? Because usually once you find out what is bothering this person, the second thing that you usually try to do is try to involve him in the proposal, so the solution of the problem. Once they feel involved, usually teams tend to really turn, and they usually, instead of being someone that is affecting, usually now as they take part of this, they usually get like, oh yeah, let's try to work this together. And once they feel that, they usually the situation completely shift.
Yeah. Perfect. Carrie?
That's a really excellent point. And also really important to remember, when you're in a group setting, if there's a bad actor, say, hey, let's you and I talk one-on-one offline about this so I can really understand how you feel about this. Don't aggravate the situation with the group, because a lot of times the people in the group aren't really the bad actor. Pull them aside one-on-one and have some more productive conversations, because Andreas is exactly right. Usually there is some underlying thing here that is something personal. There's some sort of internal pressure that this person is feeling. There could be a money issue. There could be a bureaucratical, political power polling issue, things that you don't really know about that you might be able to uncover better one-on-one.
Yeah, and I want to add a question within this question specifically about the definition of bad actor. Sometimes a difficult conversation is not difficult because you know you're going to have kind of a conflict on the other side, but because you know there have been some inconsistency or conflicts of interest that you probably know are present but you can't confirm. And you have to have a conversation that you know you can't just bring to the table as transparently as possible, because some of the items can be awkward. Like, for example, in the example of Gap in general, sometimes we work with clients who have their own other teams that they have contracted outside of their internal hires. And sometimes they have their own priorities and stuff like that that they can't openly perhaps bring up with us. It's not our job to do so either. How would you recommend kind of tackling those situations where there can be an ambiguous conflict of interest item that's bringing in kind of bad blood, but maybe not intentionally? I don't know if my question is clear, if you need more details, but it's a scenario I've seen a couple of times. So go ahead, Carrie.
Sorry, I'm being so chatty today. But we have this exact same scenario with a new partner of ours called Version 1. They're also an SI like us, and they have a customer. And so it's their customer, yet we're involved, and they really very much need our help. So I just got a phone with Danilo and Gibraltar, and we've decided that we're going to lay out the next steps very clearly and see if that aligns with their thinking, and working through those next steps and agreeing on them is probably going to be the most productive path forward to easing everybody's concerns. When we have this sort of who's on first, who's responsible for what, it's almost going to turn into a finger pointing situation. And so we're,
yeah, I
that's
think
how we're going to handle
you
it.
nailed it. I think that's, pretty much a lot of what I've seen. And solving that is not easy. Like, getting everything straightened out can be a little bit complex sometimes. All right. Anybody want to add anything to that part or have any other questions? Also, Robert, do you have any further clarification that you would like on your question?
No, thank you very much for those answers. I appreciate it. So,
All
and
right.
I would encourage others to ask questions, because if you don't, I will. I got a lot. So.
Oh, please do. That's the whole idea. I mean, keep them coming. It's all good. All right. We have another one. Thank you, Robert. All right. How do we balance maintaining a strong client relationship with the need to assert our professional guidance, especially when the client is hesitant to follow it? Interesting. All right. Fabio, I see your gears turning. So, Todd, awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this actually is kind of a sweet spot. So I've for a long time had kind of my own internal policy. So coming from a design perspective, right, there's a lot of opinions about what we're doing. There's a lot of experience and history behind a lot of what we come up with. There's best practices and things too, but there's a lot of I rarely come to the table not being able to back up what I'm doing and making a case for it. But at some point I will not. I will back down and let a client, kind of, for lack of a better word, have their way. But I always make sure that have stated my point of the case for why I'm suggesting we do something the way we do it. Client oftentimes has feedback or difference of opinion on that particular thing, and my approach is to then say it one more time. I want to make sure you understand I'm the professional sometimes it comes down to, hey, you hired us. I mean, we know what we're doing. And I wouldn't say those words, but you get it, right? This is coming from a place of, a pretty good confidence here. And I'm going to kind of put it back in your hands, and you're the last one to make a decision, right? You can listen to me. I've made sure that you understand what I'm saying. If you feel strongly enough about this is not the approach we want to take, we want to go a different way, it makes me feel comfortable knowing that I've made sure they understand everything. And I can walk away going, I tried, right? And it's rarely worth really beating it down and having that very difficult conversation or trying to convince someone that you're right when they're just not going to hear it. So usually 2 times is enough for me to say, cool, no problem. We'll move on. It's off my back now. We're going to do this. Just real quick. So in my area, we have the leverage of saying, and I think applies to a lot of things, a lot of projects, you say one thing, I'm saying another thing. Let's take this to the people who are using this stuff, right? We're all building software here. We have a difference of opinion. Let the users answer this for us. I think it's this way, and they may tell us it's a third way we didn't even think of. But again, making sure they understand where I'm coming from is from a good place, and I want to help them. If they don't want to hear it, that's cool. As long as you understand what I'm trying to say here and my opinion on the matter, just let it go. So it's been my approach for a long time. It works pretty well.
All right. I think I'm going to steal that one from you, Todd. I really like that approach. I'm going to start using it. Thank you. All right. Anybody else want to add? Oh, there's Paul. Go ahead.
Yeah, my takeaway from that, Todd, is just that whole message of letting them know up front, look, I'm not picking a fight with you. Ultimately, if you decide to do something different, I'm going to align behind you, and I'm going to make sure that we're successful in that mission. But I want to make sure you've also heard and had the benefit of my experience. Here's where we disagree. Here's what I actually think. And I'll remind you, I'm prepared to fully align behind your direction, even though we're at opposing viewpoints. But it's really, really valuable to keep it from being a fight, letting it be a professional disagreement.
Yeah. Emma, go ahead.
Something I will add is also kind of mentioned already, but something that I read from a difficult conversations book, in fact, is it mentioned that when you are having some difficult conversation, there are more than 2 voices. There are voices in your head and the other person's head. And usually when you first try to hear the other person first and try to acknowledge what that person is saying, that person feels their emotions even acknowledged. And when that happens, that person is more open to hear your statements and to hear what you have to say about it. Obviously, taking into consideration after listening what that person said, you can use it and you can join all together. Also, another tip that was mentioned in the book was to state the things not from your perspective or not even that person's perspective. You can state the things from a third person that is looking at the situation and mentioning what I'm seeing here is this happening in this side, this happening in this side, this is how we are feeling, and let's work together to solve it. Let's work together to maybe I have a suggestion. Or another thing is to state how that person can contribute and how I can contribute, because usually in these kind of difficult situations, there are both sides can provide contributions as well. So that can promote kind of a teamwork together to solve the situation.
All right. Thank you. Awesome, Emma. Thank you for that. Fabio?
Yeah, thank you. So working on Emma's statement, I usually, support the practice of the active listening with asking questions, all the questions that I can ask, because I try to avoid closed questions because that will not give me enough information to, build the real idea of what is really happening and why someone is, hesitant to do something that we know it's going to help them on the short, middle, or long term. So I try to overcome that with asking them about their perspective and how they interpret the situation that is at hand. And this helped me to build my understanding and create empathy around the situation and approach with the solution thinking approach to a conversation.
Yeah, and building upon what you said, Fabio, actually, I have an interesting example, personal example of that recently. When I heard from the client who was trying to go for an approach that didn't make any sense. Technically, we were very confused on why they were following a totally different route. And that person mentioned that they were under a tight, non-optional deadline to deliver it under those conditions, no matter what, by a certain date. So no matter what my advice or my team's advice would have been, at the end of the day, if you listen to that and you know that that's what they need to keep their job, for example, hey, let's do what's best to let them keep their job, and we'll focus on that. Of course, clarifying, as I think Todd mentioned, hey, these are the conditions under which, this change, what's going to happen when we apply the change in this way instead of that other one. We leave everything as we said. We clarify that that's our recommendation, but we understand their specific situation. We're going to have to tackle that different approach because there's not much of an option there. So yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, that just reminded me of, I think, a good point. The way you mentioned it, it's important to remember that oftentimes people are coming with something behind them, right? To your point, we don't know it. And I could think of, 10 reasons why someone might be walking into a difficult conversation, being frustrated, whether that's, they're on the hook for a project deadline, they're on the hook for the budget, right? Especially budget conversations are tough when someone's like, I got to report to my boss, or I've got investors that are investing in this thing, and you're telling me, we need more money to get this thing done. So, not really advice, but just it's always good to remember, or if you can ask, then that I think can help sometimes. But rarely are people just frustrated because they're frustrated, right? There's some other driving force behind it, and you may not know what it is. But it's kind of good to remember that there's likely something else going on there, and just kind of being empathetic to the person on the other end, right? They're rarely a bad person coming at you because they're angry at you and they don't like you. It's because of something else that likely they can justify. So if you can get to what that is, maybe you can help, but at least understanding it and coming to the conversation, thinking about that is, can be helpful. And these helps me be more empathetic in the conversation.
Yeah, that's right. And as you mentioned, there can be tons of different reasons we have no idea about. It's pressure on their day-to-day activities, and they're going to have to continue dealing with them even if we don't after the call is over. All right. Anybody else want to add to this item, or do you have another question? I also have other ones in here if necessary. Sorry, I'm distracted. That whole awkward silence thing is kind of fun. Sorry. All righty. What techniques do you use to keep emotions in check during a tense discussion? That would be the next one. Anybody want to volunteer?
Could you repeat, please?
Yeah, of course. What techniques do you use to keep emotions in check during a tense discussion? Sometimes you just want to scream at the person on the other side, for example. How do you keep from losing control, I guess? Go ahead, Andres.
Well, one of the things I can say is, like, if you start feeling the conversation is really getting very heated, then sometimes you have to say, hey, let's take a break. Let's go for a glass of water. Let's come back in 5 minutes or 30 minutes and let's continue with this. Because the first thing you want to avoid is you always have to keep it cool, no matter how much you want to respond back. You just cannot engage in the heated discussion. You just have to avoid that at all costs. And sometimes acknowledging that, we have mentioned it many times, that you have to acknowledge the situation as well. You have to acknowledge that other people is not feeling well or is feeling really bad. You have to give people time to process all those things.
That is so true. Thank you, Andres. Paul?
Yeah, I think the technique that Emma mentioned earlier is also very effective here, and looking at it from a third party point of view, to try to shift your perspective to a third party who's observing the situation, and then put that to voice, to say something along the lines of, look, I can tell that you're really frustrated or angry, and I'm also pretty emotional about this right now. And so I can see that we're both sort of having a moment, and then, you know, using some of those techniques to say, let's take a break, or let's focus on, first, I want to hear you out, right? We're going to take turns, and you go first. And like Carrie said, I'm gonna just listen to everything that you're saying and try to make sure that I've heard you. The other thing that I try to remind myself when emotions come into play, to try to keep it diffused, is to stay focused on facts and not on judgments or value statements, but around actual observations of things that happened, right? The release was supposed to go out Tuesday, and it didn't go out until Thursday. That's an observation. That's reality, right? But saying the release was late, or you know, somebody messed up and got in the way, like when you start adding judgment to it, then that tends to intensify emotion. If you can keep your conversations fact-based and observation-based, then it tends to allow the conversation to be more constructive.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Paul. Laura?
Paul says all I want to do to say so. It's the same. I will repeat what he says. Is that what I think? It's not a personal. I think I like to think it's not a personal conversation. It's not about me. It's about an issue. So when you do it about the person, you will attack, and you will try to defend yourself. So it's about the problem. It's about the issue. It's not the person. So yeah, that is my way. And I love to cry a little bit, like I because sometimes you need to let go of that emotions. Guys, I am really honest. Sometimes I need to take a step away, cry a little bit, breathe, and come back to the issue. And
Yeah,
I
agreed.
have to remember I am human, and as a human being, I have emotions.
Exactly. Definitely not suppress them or absorb them. I can tell you from firsthand that's not a good idea. Thank you so much, Laura, for that. All right. Jose, go ahead, please. Sorry, Chahun. Sounds weird to
Yeah,
call you
who is
Jose.
Who's Jose?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess that I would say that be empathic with them, understand what they're going through, put yourself in their shoes, I guess, understanding why he's angry or whatever, and just acknowledge, say, I understand your feeling, please let me do some work, or let's get back to it later on, but acknowledge that you understand their feelings. I think that will help calm down a little bit things, and of course validate them. And something that is really hard to me, because of course if someone is very on their defensive, you by natural you'll act defensive as well, but try to avoid that if you can. I would say that.
No, I fully agree. And sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it. You just change a few
Right.
words for more aggressive versions of the same word. So yeah, agreed. Thank you. Carrie, go ahead.
That's right. I had my hand up. I think it's real important to remind them of our values as well. So remind the customer that our number one job, at least this is my number one job, is to make sure that you have an exceptional experience and that we strive for greatness. And we're going to do everything possible and fair to make things right. I mean, I know that sounds really simple, but ending on those notes is, you can't really say it enough. We want them to refer us to other people. We want them to, if this project isn't successful and they are not happy, we haven't succeeded. So.
All right, agreed. Thank you, Carrie. Emma?
Something else extra that we can use there as a technique is the reaction time. When you hear something that you don't like or whatever you hear, you should make a small pause, like breathe even, or to breathe, why not? Breathe 2 times, why not? That time is enough to let you interiorize what you hear, think about what is the best reaction in this case, and then proceed if you feel it will be good. Otherwise, as you mentioned before, it's better probably to wait for later. But that small time instead of an immediate reaction let you think better about what could be a better answer for the situation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Emma. All right. Anybody want to add anything on this subject or ask another question? Man, Robert is on fire. All right. Okay. So many leaders hesitate to introduce team dynamics. Books like The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team or Gap's favorite, Traction. Gap seems particularly successful in this regard. So, having said that, the first question is, from your experience, which principles from these or similar books have most effectively fostered productive team relationships? Or if you'd like to answer the second question, you can do that as well. How do you address challenges in implementing these concepts? Andres, please go ahead.
I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with the concept of a L10 meeting, but like very brief. Usually, L10 meetings starts with happy news or good news to share. That is great. That has been working great for me. Usually because we start knowing more each other, getting more. We break the ice. We just feel more comfortable to discuss other things. And that's one of those things that has made the teams I'm involved with to build a better relationship that it really makes a difference in the day-to-day to discuss any difficult topic or anything. So from my experience, usually, I can say L10 structures really works.
All right. Thank you, Andres. Carrie?
Yeah, there's a book that I love. It's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a super easy read, and it's just walks through different scenarios about how to actually say what you mean and reword it in a way that is received better by the other party and accomplishes what you're trying to get across. So that book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, is good.
Thank you, Carrie. I'll write a small message so you can send me the book name later via Slack because I've been looking for something to read. So thank you. Paul.
And building on that, and I think this is also key to 5 Dysfunctions. I think there's a very important aspect to vulnerability and creating a safe space. So there's a lot of different techniques you can use to sort of to create a safe space where people will feel comfortable opening up to each other, being a little bit vulnerable, expressing their concerns or fears or weaknesses, or expressing concerns about the other person without it being interpreted as an attack. So I think there's a lot around that that concept of emotional intelligence and vulnerability, and creating that safety, creating that safe space that a lot of the other practices sort of then click into. But it's foundational in my view.
All right, thank you. Robert, does that address your question? Any?
Yeah, so I had a quick follow-up, and this is my last question. Someone else has to ask questions, but so we find that these books, these concepts, that they can work well within a company and within the teams of the same company. But sometimes I'm kind of curious. Do I try something out when I'm on a call with a customer team? Do I do the the good news thing when the customer is on the call? Have you ever tried that? Should we do it, or is it just too dangerous? And I'm gonna take my answer off the air, as the saying goes.
Go ahead, Paul.
I would say yes. I mean, without necessarily explaining what you're doing, I think Andres' example of starting a meeting with good news, asking people to share personal news. You can do it that way, but you can also sort of lead it by, and I think we do this naturally. You're engaging in a conversation with a prospect or client, and you ask them, hey, what did you do this weekend? Or is there anything that you're looking forward to? Are you going on vacation at Christmas? So you can borrow some of these techniques and sort of fold them in without being too bookish about, like, hey, here's this technique that I took from the Traction series. If you'd like to refer to chapter 7. But yeah, I think experimenting and using these things with new groups that are unfamiliar with where they came from can be just as effective.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Paul. Todd, go ahead, please.
Yeah, and I agree with what Paul said entirely. I've found that just building a relationship with our coworkers, our teams, building a relationship with a client, makes all those conversations easier to have. It also, I feel like it probably diffuses some of those as well, right? We're kind of just getting to know you and spending time together, and we're all making sure they know that you've got their best interest in mind. You're marching towards the same goals they are. That can be personal. That can be, how's it going? I just popped in my head. A client of ours was on vacation or coming up. I'm going to be unavailable next week, and so it's a simple question of, what are you doing? And it turns out she was going to Disney World. We're going to Disney World for Christmas, and we had a whole conversation about it. And we're not best friends, but we built a little bit of rapport there. I asked her how it was when she got back, any tips. We're just starting to, just not becoming friends, but we're becoming friendly. And then when I have to tell her, you're gonna need more money. That's a little bit easier when it comes from someone she, has had a nice conversation with and looks forward to maybe talking to. So I do try to find ways. It's not just start the call, get down to business with a client, right? Sometimes it's good just to kind of ease into it and build up that relationship. It does make those conversations, I think, a little bit easier to stomach, and you can be a bit more grounded in those conversations when you're, on the same kind of playing field.
And speaking of that, there's a really, and this is not actually a question, it's just something to take into account that we've been noticing. Well, I think we've all known for a while now, but it's something that helps a little bit to understand the cultural differences, which is it's a very important point that sometimes we overlook. For example, one of the issues that I constantly have to deal with new teams and the clients is kind of making them understand that there's usually some sort of first contact kind of experience. For example, one of the very Latino things that we do as Latinos is when you ask us, did you understand what I just said? You just gave us a bunch of instructions, or we tried to clarify something for you. We are just going to go like, and inside our own heads, we're like, I have no idea what you just said. I'll just try to figure out on my own. And if I mess up, I'll ask later. And usually whenever I get a new team, I have to tell them, hey guys, just tell them you didn't understand a bit. They're not gonna get mad at you. I know that culturally it's not necessarily ideal, because as Latinos, whenever we do that, maybe we don't get the best possible answer from other Latinos. But when we're working with clients, particularly in the United States, that difference is important. And I'm telling everybody in the meeting here, hopefully, if you guys join my teams later, I won't have to go over this too much. But it's okay to say, hey, thank you for letting me know about this. I might need to get back to you because I understood like 70% of what you said. Or heck, hey, I didn't understand A, B, and C. Can you recap that, and then I can clarify it, instead of just nodding. So this is a very small example. There's all kinds of differences, both very good differences and differences that need to be worked on first, on both sides of the aisle. And understanding each other helps a lot. For example, I do the things on the other side. Like, for example, when my team tells them, hey, this client is really direct with telling us things, it feels almost like they're threatening us. Like, no, hold on. That's just the way they communicate. They're not trying to threaten you. They're just being more direct than you're used to. And then the team feels a lot better. Like, oh, that's, just how they handle those types of conversation. Yep, that's it. And then they feel a lot more comfortable. And whenever they have the same type of conversation later, my team's like, yeah, you were absolutely right. They were just giving us instructions, and they just said it differently from the way we did. So kind of integrating and understanding each other, the whole empathy part and the whole understanding part, I think, is very important. We're all different at the end of the day, even more than culturally, personally. I think Emma made a great job of kind of clarifying that. Not only do we have all kinds of stuff in our heads that we're dealing with personally, but we also have other layers of things that we have to go through before we understand each other. And going to the latest level that Todd said, hey, at the end of the day, maybe even having friendly conversations is going to make communication a lot better and interaction in general. So yeah, be precise, not nice. Does that come on USC? Darren, you're right on the money. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Andres.
Building up on your comment, it's not just when receiving the message, it's also when giving the message. I feel like we grew kind of sugarcoating things. Try to put it, as Darren was saying, as nicely as possible without being too direct. And that's part of the things we should improve, in a way that sometimes the client or the person that is receiving the message, they really want to receive that and not go in circles or just putting it nicely. It's not that bad. It's burning, but it's not that bad. And and that's one of the things that I definitely feel like, culturally speaking, and we cannot generalize, I know, but that's one of the things we should be more aware of. And of course, there's always going to be misinterpretations. The nuances of the messages are going to be different depending on who. So we need to be very clear and rephrase and make sure that double check the person is getting the message. Otherwise, things might go wrong.
Beating around the bush, the eternal comment that we received. Yeah, man, it's tough. I still need to work on it myself quite a lot. So I love that use of a lot. Just yeah, Miguel, you're right. At the end of the day, just double check. If you're not sure if the other person understood you or if you understood them, just ask again. It'll be okay. All right. We're getting close to the end of this meeting. So I don't know if we want to go through one last question, one last comment before I wrap things up. Anybody want to add anything else? Oh, wow. Oh, nice. All right. Andres, and then Juan.
Very fast, sorry. This is something Stefania was just mentioning one of these days, and I definitely feel that's just very right about that. Like, you really want to work with teams where you can discuss difficult topics, but also working together on solving those topics. So building great relationships on your teams, that makes the whole difference. So that was my final thought.
Yeah, building relationships on your team definitely does make a big difference. Thank you, Andres. Wanda?
Yeah, I think that probably this comment is going to be good for the wrapping up of the session, because if something we can definitely conclude after the session is that having difficult conversations is not definitely about the topic itself. It's like really the people, the communication, the people around that are getting involved. So once we have that clear, let's say we have the waters fall and everything is calmed down, and we can have, let's say, a natural and neutral conversation. which advices or recommendations would you bring to get the conversation in the right direction at that point once everything's calmed down?
That's a question, right? Just clarifying.
Yeah, it's kind
Okay.
of initial comment followed by a question. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So once everything's calmed down, what's a couple of tips? Oh,
Correct.
actually, I can actually answer that. Daryl, who didn't make it to this call, but it's all good. He actually shared this with me, specifically for feedback. But in general terms, let me share this before I forget to do so. The first one: don't wait for feedback. You get it, you share it. Well, it's still relevant, or it's still important. The next one: if you're not sure how to deal with that conversation, practice ahead of time with someone who can help you do a role play. It helps out quite a lot. Focus on the issue, not the person. This has been covered by our panelists today quite thoroughly. And ask questions more than statements. Once again, this has been shared as well ahead of time. Other than that, if Todd, Andres, or Paul, or Fabio want to add, Fabio, perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah. So difficult conversations, or the goal is to emerge with the agree upon resolution, but that sometimes that doesn't occur, right? So you need to create a follow-up protocol for it. That way you can ensure that you give space to restore that relationship, and then, re-engage the conversation with a more clear mind, thinking about resolution, and build something collectively that can help both parts to achieve a goal in a more, smoother way.
Todd, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think back to Daryl's point about not waiting, that's kind of a good one too, right? In a heated conversation, leaving the conversation with maybe some action items or some research to do, whatever it is, putting it off, delaying that, can only maybe make things harder, right? So show the client that you heard them, that you care what they're having frustrations about, and you're working on it, right? So even if it's just an acknowledgement that you'll follow up, just make some progress on it, I think is good. Let them know you're making progress on it, and that you didn't just take, their emotions and their frustrations and just kind of sat with it. I'll work on it when I get time. Make it a priority, if you can. That help diffuse the situation and hopefully get you back on more stable ground. So that's one thing I like to do. I think people respond very well when, an hour later you've come back with a quick action, knowing that there's more to do, but you're on top of it. Make people feel good.
That it does. Thank you, Todd. And by the way, thank you, Fabio. Don't know if I thank you for the other addition on your end. So actually, I think we're right at our time limit. So I would like to thank you all for participating so much.